Open your cerebral cortex and shift your lobes into upper beta phase, because you are going to have Bitcoin knowledge transmitted directly into your vestibulocochlear. Your host at Bitcoin Knowledge is Trace Mayer, an early Bitcoin advocate since it cost $0.25, but this is not intended to be investment advice. A doctor of jurisprudence, but this is definitely not legal advice. And an investor in core cryptocurrency infrastructure, including Armory, BitPay, Kraken, and Mitagio, but this is not a recommendation of those services. Here, you get fed via direct mind download with pure and free Bitcoin knowledge.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Knowledge Podcast. This is episode 1, and you're in for a tremendous interview with senior Bitcoin Armory wallet developer Andy Ofeisch over at Armory Technologies. Welcome, Andy.
Hi, Trace. Glad to be back.
Yeah, so we're just going to dive right in. We're going to talk about multi-signature and fragmented backups and how we can implement those two extremely powerful tools to create a good security plan for our Bitcoins or a good secession plan, things like that. So let's start off. What exactly is multi-signature and how is it used?
Well, multi-signature is very simply a feature of Bitcoin that allows you to protect your Bitcoins with more than one address. So before multi-signature, you would send Bitcoins to a public address, which corresponded with a public and private key pair. So the Bitcoins would be at a particular address, which represents a public key. And to spend those Bitcoins, the owner of that public key would have to prove that they know the private key. And then that process of proving is what's actually called signing. When they sign a transaction to send their Bitcoins, the signed transaction proves that they can provide the private key. So with multi-sig, the owner or owners of those Bitcoins would have to gather some number of the signatures that control those Bitcoins. So you might send Bitcoins to a two of three multi-sig address, and then 2 out of the 3 private keys behind that address must sign in order to move those Bitcoins again. So you might have a 3-member board of directors, or you might have a buyer, a seller, and an escrow agent, or you could have even a parental custodial account where 2 out of the 3 amongst 2 parents and a child would have to sign off on moving those Bitcoins.
Yeah, so just to recap from episodes 100 and 101, we have this public key, and that's where Bitcoins are at. And then we have a private key, and the private key is really just a number, like a really big number. And we have to have that particular number in order to move the Bitcoins. But with multi-signature, we actually have multiple numbers that are required in order to move the Bitcoins.
Right. And the Bitcoin program knows to check to have a certain amount of those signatures on the transaction.
And that would be 2 of 3 in your example. But
yeah,
I mean, it could go all the way up to what?
Well, with Bitcoin Armory, we support 7 of 7.
Wow! So we could really distribute out the signing authority for Bitcoins.
Right. So you could have the obvious example would be a 7-member board of directors.
Yeah. So like a hedge fund, for example, that wants to buy $20 million worth of Bitcoins, if they put that in a single signature address, in a way, they're trusting their chief technology officer or whoever could get access to that one particular private key or that one number. they're trusting a single point of failure, right? But with how Armory implements this multi-signature, is there a single point of failure?
Well, no, not only that, but you can also take this to the next level and have a completely distributed board, which maybe none of the members know each other. You can have an organization exist solely on the blockchain, such that the people involved with running this company aren't even don't even know who they are.
So, like an example of how that would work is there would be an offline spending transaction created, but then the collection of the signatures could all happen in a very blind way.
Well, yes. What happens with Armory is you can create whatever transaction you want. Imagine this imaginary 7-person board of a company that exists in the ether and nobody knows each other. You could have any member or anyone really create a transaction. You could have other people that don't have signing authority, but have the ability to create transactions too. So you might even have an administrator create transactions for the board members to sign. And then that transaction gets sent via email, say, or text or whatever, or a fax even.
Yeah, because we're just talking about a regular offline transaction that's just unsigned, so it's just a string of text. So perhaps even use BitMessage, because that has no metadata associated with it like email does.
Right. But you could literally fax it and type it in. I mean, it would be a pain in the neck.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. We're talking about character data. We're not talking about some binary file where everything in it is hidden. And if you really wanted to decode that fax, you could bring up the source code because it's open source, and you could actually decode it yourself by hand. Now, this is important because we're dealing with anonymous board members, and everybody has to trust everyone. And normally you would, but with Bitcoin, that's not necessary. Because you can get into the source code and understand exactly what it is you're signing and looking at.
And at the end of the day, you just have to be able to prove to the Bitcoin network that you've got that private key or that signing authority. Right. And you don't necessarily have to prove it to the other people in your circle.
Right. So I've gotten off on a tangent. The important thing is you take this string of text and you can sign it. And when you sign it, you get a different string of text and you can send that around. Now, eventually, one person will get the transaction with enough signatures. And if they approve, they'll sign it and they'll have enough signatures, and then they can broadcast it themselves. Any member of the board receiving this transaction with, say, 4 signatures, if it was a 4 or 7, once they see the 4 signatures, they're like, all right, I got 3 board members who agree with me. This transaction should go out, and then they can just send it.
Now, this is very important from a segregation of duties standpoint. Like in traditional auditing or accounting and process design, the person who has signing authority on the bank account or the cash account, for example, should also not be the one that's approving transactions or keeping track of the ledger, the general ledger for the company or things like that, because it opens up a potential for embezzlement or other types of ways for the money in the company to disappear. So this is a very important tool for people to be able to hold lots of Bitcoin, people or in institutions, right?
Right.
Mainly.
So basically, you've replaced the handshake, the well-established connections, judging somebody's character. You've replaced all of that with the Bitcoin protocol, which you cannot. You can't get around it.
Well, I guess you could get around it if you could get 2 out of the 3 signatures or 5 out of the 7, right? But that would require collusion, and it would require the signers to actually know the other people and be able to communicate with them and then talk them into engaging in the collusion.
Well, here's the thing about or trickery. you know. But at a certain point, if you've got a majority of a group colluding, well, then they are
they are the board of directors, right?
You're if you're not happy about being a part of this operation, then geez, that's you're the odd one out. You should probably get out of that.
Right.
I mean, here's the thing, though. It's a lot harder to get a group like that together than to just do it yourself. So it really is quite a barrier. And also when it comes to trickery, because, some of the biggest Bitcoin heists have involved one person being tricked into sending their Bitcoin to an attacker's address. So with multisig, the trickery and the access to the people who have the keys, it's really like a double authentication setup, where you'd have to get at least two people to sign off on a con.
And let's talk a little bit more about the actual details of that. So when we create a transaction, we have the address where the Bitcoins are currently at, and then we have the address where the Bitcoins are going to go.
Right.
And so when Armory creates that unsigned transaction, is it possible when that's being circulated around to get signatures to just go and change the address where the Bitcoins are going to go?
Well, see, if you did that, that would invalidate the previous signatures.
So we aren't, like, that potential attack vector isn't even possible.
Right. No, you couldn't change it. When you sign something, you're signing the important aspects of the transaction. Now, here's something else to know. I mean, one of the ways in which people get tricked is there's different ways you can sign. There's different kinds of signatures. If you can sign something, you can sign just the fact that you're sending your Bitcoins out, and you don't actually have to sign the output. There's a specific kind of signature where you don't. Now, Armory doesn't allow that, but when a particular other wallet was attacked, people were inserting these SIG hash types, is what they're called, signature hash types, and people were getting tricked into signing open-ended, basically the equivalent of a blank check.
Right. You didn't make out a pay to the order of
right
in the signature hash.
Right. So that's possible in the protocol. It's non-standard, and people can get tricked into doing that. Actually, I don't know if it's for sure if it's not standard, but
that's something that someone who's not even aware that there's a SIG hash type and that they're just trusting whichever wallet they're using might inadvertently get tricked into.
Right. Exactly.
Man, like there really are a lot of potential pitfalls for people in the security space that, it's important, I think, for people just to be aware of, like, what is possible with the protocol.
Yeah. So the thing about Bitcoin that you have to be aware of is that Bitcoin is a protocol that allows for a great deal of security. The actual security isn't built into Bitcoin. I mean, there's some pretty basic things that Bitcoin does in order to work, with like signing and all that. But it's not complete. And that's one of the ways in which people have been losing their Bitcoins is they overestimate the amount of security that comes with the protocol. What you need is software on top of that adds the extra layers of security that are needed for business applications. Well,
and this goes all the way back to the very genesis of Armory, right? Like, Alan saw, it was theoretically possible to do the whole concept of cold storage, and Satoshi even recommended doing it, but the software hadn't been built, and so Alan was like, "Oh, I could build that," and so he built it, right?
Right. It's not like Alan had the vision. It's these people on the Bitcoin forums who had the vision initially, and they would go on and they would discuss, oh, here's some things I would need to use this in my business, or to use this to implement this business plan that I have in my head. And they would discuss these things on the forums. And Alan came along and was like, "Oh, I know how to do that. Oh yeah, I can do that." And he just started doing it because
and
it was fun for him.
And this, and yeah, it's fun, but this is actually like a very complicated problem to solve, right? Because you've got the math and the cryptography and the statistics that you have to be able to do, but then you have to be able to translate that into software code.
Right.
And that's not necessarily the easiest problems to solve.
Yeah.
which unfortunately we've seen lots of problems in the Bitcoin space, and then there's things like Mt. Gox. I mean, everybody's like, how do we not have a $500 million loss in this space? Yeah. Well, we could use multi-signature like we have in Armory. We could use that, and then we wouldn't have $500 million losses unless there was massive collusion.
Right. But, if you're a megalomaniac with a company that is successful beyond anyone's imagination, and you don't want to hand over the reins to anyone, well, it's not likely you're going to use multi-sig anyway.
Well, and that raises a very good point, right? Because with Bitcoin, you either have the private key or you don't. And so you can distribute those private keys. And then you can know that those private keys have been distributed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think a lot of, especially in financial services, a lot of the banks or the investment accounts or whatever, they really, really like holding people's private keys to their assets. They like holding the share certificates with the DTCC. They like being able to hypothecate or rehypothecate those share certificates. I mean, we saw things like Madoff and John Corzine with MF Global, where they're actually, they were entrusted to hold the private keys to these customer segregated assets, and then they went and did unconscionable things with that trust. But with Bitcoin, we're able to know exactly who's in charge of holding those private keys.
Well, here's the thing. You say they went and did unconscionable things, when actually what they did is normal things that humans do to each other in the course of history.
Well, I mean, I guess unconscionable because people are supposed to go to prison for stealing lots of people's retirement accounts and
exactly.
lots of people's assets, right?
And your assets are basically being protected with the threat of prison time. You really have to trust that the person controlling your assets is afraid of the threat of prison time.
Well, yeah. So you could say that there's a proof of violence that is protecting assets when we have these centralized ways of distributing the property rights. But with Bitcoin, where we have this decentralized, distributed way of protecting assets, we're able to protect the assets based on proof of trust or the proof of math. So we're relying not on this government threat to people who steal other people's money, but instead we're relying on the math and the cryptography.
Right. And with all the stuff that's been in the news lately about regulatory capture, we're finding out that we can no longer trust the government to keep an eye on these large financial institutions. Yeah,
well, that's definitely an issue.
So you need math. Yeah, well, that's what Bitcoin has.
Well, why? Well, just from a logical point of view, why trust this centralized institution that could be potentially influenced when instead you could just trust math?
Yeah.
It's not like the math is going to change. I mean, that's very incorruptible. So if you want to have your accounting books and you want to have your cash balances and you want to have your assets all distributed up, you can do it and you can prove to yourself that it's been done, and then you don't have to worry about anything happening from you are in effect able to eliminate that political risk uncertainty.
Right.
You don't have to worry about Argentina changing something. because they can't change the math rules in the protocol.
Right. And that's why Bitcoin. That's why people are excited about it. They think that this is going to change the way we do business in the future.
Yeah. Well, and we also have the triple entry bookkeeping. So we have the debit, the credit, and we have the confirmation in the Bitcoin network. So we know the transactions happened. So we're able to have much greater transparency on our financial statements, in addition to this much greater security. Let's see. So we talked about multi-signature, the fragmented backups. That's where we're able to split up the wallet seed, so that we need, say, 2 of 3 pieces in order to constitute that particular wallet, and then we might need 2 of 3 private keys to send the Bitcoin transaction. So with fragmented backups, we're able to further distribute the signing authority, or at least the backup authority of the wallets.
Well, with the combination, each signing authority in the multi-sig will have no single point of failure. So you basically have a double layer of no single point of failure.
And that means what? Much more security, much more why is that valuable to people who are using?
Well, here's what it is. I think what multi-sig gives you is protection against a dishonest party within your board or within the signing authority, whoever is able to sign.
Yeah, because it might be a trust company, it might be an insurance company,
might be a family,
might be a family member. Yeah,
might be that dad has a gambling problem. Who knows? Dipping into the kids' savings, which would be even more devastating than, say, a dirty board member. The thing is, though, right? You're protected against that level of dishonesty. You're also protected against any one member of the signing group being conned. And then once you add in the fragmented backup, you're also protected against a member being incompetent and losing their private key. In fact, 2 members, right? If it's 2 or 3, 2 out of the 3 members would have to lose 2 out of 3 of their fragmented backups. I mean, the odds against are tremendous.
Yeah. So in effect, we're like, with this piece of software, as it currently is, we've got protections against negligence, gross negligence, maliciousness, or intentional willful malicious behavior, where it'd be embezzlement or something.
Yeah.
It really helps make Bitcoin a lot more usable for larger amounts of capital.
Yeah, and the thing is, you're protecting yourself against all of the usual ways in which corporate entities lose their funds. The thing is, when you bring in Bitcoin, just bringing in Bitcoin adds this additional way. You can lose the key. It's a piece of data, and you're trying to protect it, and in protecting it, you can lose it. So I don't know if everyone is aware that just by using Bitcoin, you're adding this extra risk. And then by using fragmented backup, you're mitigating the extra risk that comes into play when you use Bitcoin.
And then by using the multi-signature, because if we're using only single keys, like with Mt. Gox, for example, there's no way to prove whether he inadvertently lost the Bitcoins, whether he was hacked and somebody else stole the Bitcoins, or whether he embezzled and stole the Bitcoins himself.
Right.
Like, there's no way to prove one way or the other, right?
Well, yeah, and also with Bitcoin, there's often no way to prove that either. One of the things you can do is see when Bitcoins move, but you can't always tell where they're moving to. Right. It's possible you can. I mean, it's there. It's in the public record. But it would take some detective work and inferences, and you would have to have other knowledge about the addresses involved. So it's a very complex problem to solve, but it's not unsolvable.
Well, yeah, but like, let's say that Mark Karpeles instead of getting hacked, like he said, he just embezzled the bitcoins, and he moves them to an address, and then he just doesn't touch them until after the bankruptcy proceedings are done and the statute of limitations is told.
Right. Here's the thing, though. One screw up, at some point, something he might trip up, and then he's going to get caught because it's all going to be on the public record.
Right. And we just, so it's very difficult. We don't know whether people have embezzled the bitcoins or whether people actually did get hacked, and there's no way to prove either way, or whether they're just negligent and they send the bitcoins into an address that they're not able to get them out of.
Right.
Because maybe you screw up and leave one of the letters off on the public key or something when you go to send it, and your wallet software didn't check for that.
Well, I don't know if that's a possibility.
Well, yeah, that's true. Maybe you copied and pasted.
It wouldn't go through. That's one of the things about the Bitcoin protocol. If you make a mistake, if you make a single mistake in creating a transaction, the transaction won't work. It's impossible to really send a transaction accidentally to the wrong place. The only time you send it to the wrong address is when somebody's tricking you into sending it to their address.
Right, like you copy and paste it, but when you go to paste it, maybe the computer virus on your computer changed the paste address.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 999,099 whatever times out of a gajillion, you're going to run into an error and not actually send it someplace.
So just to recap, because I actually don't think we talked about this in the other two episodes. A lot of people that come to use Bitcoin, you see these really long public key addresses. So what you're saying is, if you inadvertently mistype one of the characters or something like that, the Bitcoin network's not going to see that as a valid transaction.
Right. So the odds against making a mistake and ending up with a different valid transaction than the one you wanted are astronomical.
Okay, well that should help people sleep a little bit better at night, knowing that they don't have to. They should still be triple checking their addresses.
It's important to forget that fact. When it comes to checking things, you want to double check as if that wasn't true.
Yeah, but maybe it's that you're sending $5 for the coffee or something, and it's nice to know that if you didn't, if your QR code reader and maybe you accidentally deleted one of the letters on it or something, like, you're not going to lose your $5.
Yeah. I mean, if you got a $5 and you're going to pay the guy at the counter, you're not going to really look at the badge or the name tag. And it's like, you don't work at 7-Eleven. I'm not giving you this $5.
Right. that people are begging for that are actually going to get built.
Well, the big one is our implementation of what's known as BIP32, which is a fancier version of the deterministic keys.
So this BIP32, this is what's called hierarchical deterministic wallets. Yeah. And this is another brainchild of Alan's, right?
Well, yeah,
Alan and I think SIPA, Peter.
Yeah, he was involved with the creation of BIP32. But the basic gist of it is rather than just having one chain of addresses, you have a tree, many chains coming off.
Okay. And
then as you generate addresses, each address will have, rather than just one number, a single number index, it'll have several numbers indexing it.
And this is why, and this is currently implemented. Well, not BIP32, but these chains are currently implemented in Armory, so that we only need the one paper backup, right? But this is going to be implementing it with the actual Bitcoin improvement protocol, 32, right?
Yeah, because they're all numbered, and this is the 32nd one. So what the end user will experience is they can have many wallets, and they could have their whole operation. If you have like an exchange, for instance, running off of Armory, you could have all of that backed up with one key. So you could have several wallets with one root key backing it up.
Wow, that'd be nice. So,
and this, along with other changes, is what's making Armory scalable, so that our new users, can come in and they can provide services to people through a website, or if you run your own exchange off of this, or your own business. And the whole idea is that we've scaled up Armory. We've made it much more scalable.
Right. So the core infrastructure for the Bitcoin community, Armory is really going to be able to handle a lot larger businesses, services, stuff like that.
Right.
Like an exchange or a merchant, they can use Armory and do it on them and do commerce on a much larger scale. Yeah. So, but we're also going to need some performance improvements, right? So,
well, that's coming.
A little bit about those.
Yeah, we've added a new database, LMDB, and we've refactored a lot of the back end with a lot of optimizations. A couple of our guys, super talented, Farhad and Charles, have been working away at this for the last few months, and it's very exciting. I mean, a lot of the times for loading the blockchain are down. The number of transactions that can be handled, automated transaction processing, all of this is going to be possible with the next version of Armory.
Now, when you say like Charles and Farhad, how many full-time developers are there on the Armory Bitcoin wallet?
We have 5 of us now.
5 full-time. Wow. Yeah. And so we got Alan, and he's got a master's in statistics and some computer programming. Then we got a couple other people with masters in cryptography also working on it. Yeah, very.
And we have Farhad, who is predominantly self-trained, but he came to this with his connection with Alan on the boards. So when people were paying Alan bounties to get certain projects done, if Alan needed something in an area of, say, low level Windows type thing had to be done, Farhad was, I know how to do that. And then he'd come in and help him out. So that's how we ended up with Farhad.
Yeah, well, I remember like he was finding all these bugs just like super efficiently, and he's been a great addition to the team. Mm-hmm. In fact, he's really sharp. I remember we were at one of the conferences, and someone came up and they're like talking about our wallet, and they said they asked the question. They were like, "Well, why should I use the Armory wallet?" And Farhad, he responded, "Because whoever steals your Bitcoin will." So
one way or the other, your Bitcoins are going to be protected by Armory.
So I thought that was like a very insightful quip, just off the cuff. Like, you have to respect the private keys. Yeah. You don't respect the keys, somebody else is going to get those keys, and they're going to respect them.
Right, because here's what's happened with Bitcoin is we now have a situation where data has absolute value to it.
Yeah, I mean, you steal that you steal that number, you can do the math, you can get the purchasing power. Yeah. Let's see, what else is very important for this performance improvement? We got the super node coming, right, to help scale the databases and the merchants.
That'll allow people to put thin clients on a super node where you basically set up a server that is running the super node, and then you can have thin clients working off of that server.
So this will be a super node that Armory Technologies is running, or a super node that anybody who gets the Armory
we'll probably have our own. We'll probably have our own service set up, and that'll come with our support options. I think that's where we're ended up eventually. But with what we're releasing, the software behind that type of service will be available for people to use. For
anyone to use.
Yeah.
Now this is really important because, like, when you're using Electrum or blockchain.info's supernode, you're potentially leaking a lot of information to them, right?
Well, yeah, that's just it. Is you could be the person that's having information leaked to you with our software.
which could be used in what type of a way? I mean, you would know
marketing. Who knows?
Well, yeah, you could use it for marketing. You could see IP addresses of people who are checking particular wallet balances, know which computers to attempt to target or infiltrate. I mean, it like using somebody else's supernode for your thin client in order to have the added convenience also comes with potential risks, right?
Yeah, and so get your own. That's do your own thing, and that's what our software allows.
But there's not really any other software out there that allows you to do that besides the Bitcoin QT, right?
Right.
But that's not even really a supernode.
Right. So basically, I see Armory as an intermediate between having a service where you have to trust other people or having Bitcoin core code where you have to do all the work. We've done a lot of the really difficult work so that you can be your own banker.
Oh man, that's just great because you can hold your own private keys, you can secure them to the level that you want them secured, and you don't have to trust anybody.
Yeah,
and it's open source software, so you can review all the code and all the math, and your money and your assets are safe there. Yeah, and it has to be done the right way too, because there are a lot of pitfalls as we've seen, not just with other services out there, but with other software, etc. So it's really important to do like the supernode, the BIP32, like implementing thin clients, all this has to be done properly. Otherwise, you're opening or exposing yourself to a lot of security vulnerabilities. Right. Okay. Well, there we go. That should round up this episode. Thank you so much for taking the time to discuss this multi-signature, how it can be implemented in a personal plan for security, backups, all of that, and also some of the development that's on the horizon for Armory. So thanks for being with us, Andy.
Thanks very much, Trace. It was great talking to you.
Be sure to get a copy of the free Bitcoin Guide at freebitcoinguide.com. Got a question or suggestion? Record your voice at bitcoin.kn. Don't be shy. To help the show, share bitcoin.kn with friends, post about it on Reddit, and otherwise spam the interwebs. Your iTunes comments and 5-star reviews are very important to us. Please continue tuning in to the Bitcoin Knowledge Podcast, where we release interviews with the top people in the Bitcoin world. Now take some choline and let that Bitcoin knowledge consolidate.